Hello, everyone, and welcome to Idle Insights, a show where we speak with interesting people from across the internet about Dungeons and Dragons and Idle champions. Usually Treavor Bettis is in this little box, but today I have the pleasure of taking over. Why? Because I get a chance to speak with the amazing Gabe Hicks. Welcome to the show.
Gosh. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you've been on a couple of times, but this is my first time in the interview seat, so I'm excited. And one
I'm
sorry,
gonna
go
try
ahead.
to switch with you one day.
Yeah.
One day I'm gonna be in that seat. That's my goal.
You know, we've talked about sitting at the same table playing TTRPGs together. And for a while, we were only ever DMs with each other.
Yep.
And then we finally got a chance to play together.
It was so much fun.
It was super fun. And I will say, I think I might have startled you a little bit with the chaos of my character.
No, I'm here for it. You know what? One thing that is so delightful about you, Lauren, is like when you lead with chaos, I'm like, yes. Now I just get to react to it.
Yeah, I was going to ask about this later, but you know what? Now is a really good transition because you are amazing at chaos on streams. People probably didn't get a chance to see that quite so much when you were playing Solaak on Idle Champions Presents, which we'll get to in a second, just because of the nature of your character. But a lot of the time, you enjoy being the person who pushes the button. And what I've always respected is that you do that while still not hogging spotlights or making things go real bad. And so I gotta ask, what is it about being that chaotic in a TTRPG that brings you joy?
Honestly, I think it's, as someone who DMs a lot, I think it's part of that. Because if no one knows what to do and someone presses a button that you don't know what it does, then it initiates some sort of change or something else happening. And when you initiate something that might go wrong, it's a great opportunity for like the storyteller or DM to lead into it and make something move things forward. Like I like finding out how things can go wrong because like that's the fun of storytelling. If everything went right, it wouldn't be as much of a victory to me. And I like the chaotic moments. I like the chaos. Because I also like I like seeing how people react to chaos. If you're playing a character that's like, okay, well if I open this door, the dragon's gonna get out. Everyone's like, oh my God, the dragon's just gonna like eat everybody. But then if you open it and the dragon actually turns out that they've been sad and that all they wanted to do was like tell a story about where they came from and their children, I'm like, see, y'all thought something bad was gonna happen. I also thought something bad was going on, but that's notwithstanding. I like seeing the creative moments that come out of pushing the big red button because if it says like it won't explode, but I want to know what the but is.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where like the stakes are so low because in real life we're not going to be hurt, we're not going to be injured, we're not in danger. So why not, if everyone's going to enjoy it, why not escalate the situation to see what that escalation brings in excitement?
So, what are the moments that you know when to turn that on? Because, like I said, one of the things that I appreciate is that you do that without overshadowing everybody. Because if you're too chaotic, if you're too much of the let's just go, let's just go, let's just go, people get left in the dust. So, how do you gauge that specific moment to go and push?
One of my it seems simple. One of my favorite things to do is like above table be like, hey y'all, Gabe wants to see what happens. Can I do this? And if everyone's like, yes, 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 then it's easy to opt in. And like, regardless of how their characters react after that point, I know that all the players bought in. All the players were like, yeah, we want to see this happen. If my character's like, no, this is a terrible idea, I know that like Alex as a person is still full on it, even if their characters are reacting to it.
Yeah.
And also, if I ask that question, if someone has been keeping something in and they're nervous to speak up, it's also an opportunity for them to speak up about, well, actually, I really wanted to try picking the lock with these lock picking tools I had before we blew it up. Then hell yeah, do that. Like me saying let's use dynamite is just because like I just wanted to use dynamite. If you're excited about something, I like asking that question to give the entire table a chance to buy into something they really want to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use that as the transition to say, hey, all of you at our table, as in all the people in chat, if you would like to join in on the chaos and ask Gabe a question, we are live. You can go ahead and put question in big capital letters in the chat with your question. And the other fabulous Gabe, our moderator, will be grabbing those and putting those into a little backstage document to look at for later. But now that we've had a little bit of fun talking about the chaos, let's just talk about the basics. Gabe,
Yeah.
who are you and why would people know who you are?
Ooh, I am a game designer, especially in tabletop. I am a voice actor and an entertainer and a writer. I wrote a Kids Guide to Tabletop RPGs. I have written on the Fallout, G.I. Joe, Power Rangers, Transformers, Dark Souls RPGs. I ran a season on Dimension 20 called Shriek Week with the system that I made up. I have been on Idol Champions Presents Fury of the Black Rose, playing my Drake Warden Ranger Solaak. I have done a bunch of the D&D live shows. I have written a bunch. And I cosplay a lot on the internet. Like I've cosplayed as like Echo from League of Legends. Recently did a version of Will Ravengard that went everywhere. And
Yeah.
I like was like, oh my God, I thought six people would see this. I posted this at an inopportune time on purpose. Now I'm shy. But it was so much fun.
And yeah, those cosplay videos or the images of Will were impressive, and I'm definitely going to chat about that. But let's go back to Solock for a second because one of the main
Yeah.
reasons you're here, I'll go ahead and put it up on the screen. We've got undead Knight Solock, who this skin is absolutely amazing and not something I was expecting out of Solock. Tell me a little bit about how this came about.
I was like thinking I wanted something that was different, something that I love the undead notion that you get in fantasy sometimes. And just like, okay, a death knight. Well, when someone thinks of a death knight, they think of a death knight as in like the paladin, the fighter, like the heavy person, the heavy character. And I was like, no, like what a death knight could be someone who continues to fight after they died.
Mm,
And so Solak's whole thing was swearing himself to Tiamat. And there could be some notion where his when he swore himself, it didn't mean he was just swearing his life. He could have been swearing his soul. So even after he dies, Solak could still serve the Dragon Queen. And so I was like, what would that look like? There would have to be some notion of like still him, still his appearance, still his visage. But then also like if it's not just because his Drake is a part of him, if Solak is undead, it would make sense that his Drake is as well.
yeah. And little tiny Levitts.
Yep, look, they fight as one.
Yeah, yeah. I put all three of them up on the screen, and I just thought that
Mm,
was weirdly adorable to see little
yeah.
tiny undead Levitts.
Yeah.
Was that so? That idea was that you, after the show ended, mulling over what could happen to Solok, or was that just a really cool idea you wanted to play out? Like, do you
It
have an
was
idea of what the story of Solok is after Fury of the Black Rose?
I do now. And like the story came after the skin because like when I was like talking to the team again, they're like and they can be like, whatever your mind has in mind. I'm like, anything?
Hmm.
Anything? So like I was like, well, I haven't seen many undead characters in Idol Champions. And like number one, the idea of having a full undead squad in like your Idol Champion set just feels interesting.
Yeah.
But also, how many undead ranger type characters do you see in media? You'll see knights, you'll see mages, you'll even see undead clerics. But the idea of an undead ranger is just something that I feel like is such a small margin
Yeah.
that I was like, I want my Death Knight. I want my Death Knight Ranger. And then with that story of like he continues to serve even after death, potentially there's like a ring or something that makes him look back to how he is. But then you get that like almost like Pirates of the Caribbean when something shines on him or when the ring goes off, it's a vision of who he was. He may have been serving with the Knights of Salamania for all his life, but that is a vow he swore for his life. And when
Mm.
that life ended, that vow was done, but his vow to the Dragon Queen was not.
has a very revenant feel to it,
Yeah.
without a specific, like,
Yep.
usually the classic revenants are, I'm coming back because of you, I'm going after you, but like just the
Yep.
general, this is who I'm serving now.
Yeah.
That's
Because even
cool.
even with an undead, the general notion is that they're evil. But if you are undead and you stay serving this individual, but you still have some sense of your morality, this undead figure could still be the morality check that keeps her not making the terrible choice. It's like I look like a monster and I look like this so I can make sure that she's not massacring the village, so she is not plowing through these people. You can look at me and see an abomination, but the fact that you can still see an abomination means I've done my job right because you still exist, even if she didn't want that.
And that's another interesting thing about Solock being undead is you're right that there's not a lot of undead champions on L champions or just characters in general, because I think in TTRPGs and D&D specific, a lot of people tend to lean chaotic good. They tend
Yep.
to lean good-ish. And like you were
Yeah.
saying, undead is not always seen as a good thing. So the people who are usually working with undead are necromancers or, like you said, knights and stuff. So to
Yep.
have a an undead character who is also on the side of good and at least trying to save people,
Yeah.
like that's a very evocative kind of storyline.
Yeah. Like I swear my life to the knights and I swear my soul to protecting people. And it like when you get in undead, there's a whole different layer to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And see, now I want to see you and Miria team back up.
Oh my gosh. I literally Mark had said something and I'm like, wow, they would have a great conversation because she would love that look. And he'd probably be like, oh no. Okay, yeah, I see why you yeah, okay. Yeah. And it's just like the awkward conversation that is it's like the two people who might not have been friends at that stage in their life,
Mm-hmm.
10 years later, whatever. This is the point where they actually grow closer together.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see her respecting that decision, even
Yeah.
even if Solak's like, oh dear, all right.
Yep. It's like,
Yeah.
oh no. I
And
figured
so
I'd see you again, but
yeah, yeah. Well, and then you're interacting with a necromancer who controls undead, and so that's a
yep,
whole different kind of
yep. It's like, don't you do
dynamic.
that. Don't you do that. It's like meeting Lord, why am I forgetting names? The cat folk.
Tabaxi?
Yeah, it's like meeting a tabaxi and then showing catnip. Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. That's disrespectful. Even if it works. How dare you?
I love how stuff like that it is DM to DM and character to character because
Yeah.
sometimes, all right, I'm gonna be a tabaxi, and so yeah, the catnip is gonna work.
What do
And then
you what do
sometimes
you
you gotta
think
play
what do you
against
think
type.
happens if you give a Rakshasa catnip?
I mean, it would have to be a high enough level of catnip or else it doesn't work on them, right?
That's true.
That
Hmm.
that's that might be the geekiest joke I've said in the last couple of weeks.
I'm
Right
proud.
there.
Good.
Right there. So the fun thing, like we were talking about with Solock, and I'll put them back on the screen,
Hmm.
like you were saying, you've got this Drake who
Yeah.
now has to go undead.
Yeah,
Do
Tempest.
you think there was a conversation there? Do you think there was a negotiation there? Or did your Drake just follow along for the ride?
I 100% think there was a conversation because the other thing that was important to me was that this wasn't a servitude.
Mm,
This was an agreement and a partnership. And it was that honestly, there's a solid chance that Tempest in this narrative is what pushed Solok to say yes. Solok might have been, well, I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if continuing to serve, I don't know if staying in this life in this world is going to be good for us if we're in this dire danger. And Tempest being like, if we don't do it, who will? Do
mm.
you do you want us to be do you want it to be us as her right hand or someone else who wants power instead? And that notion of you're right. Like it's there's if we don't know who's going to and with in the Idol Champions Free Black Rose, everyone else left.
Yeah.
So there's no one that he would have trusted in that same sense to take that place, to be able to protect it. So in the notion that they were like dead and could come back, Tempest, I have no doubt, would have convinced that we have this choice where we can stay here and keep doing the job. If someone else comes along that can do it better than we can and we know it, that's one thing. But we don't know that it'll be okay when we leave. So if we don't have to leave, don't.
Oh, that good sacrifice of like I will
Yeah.
give. Oh, it's so good. It's so juicy. I want to see these characters again. But yeah,
Yeah.
the skin is awesome, and yeah, maybe one of these
So
days,
wicked.
the next time you're putting a formation together, go ahead and put
Yeah.
Solaak and Miri in the same formation, and just think about that conversation.
They're just like winking at each other from a distance. Well, Miriam might be winking, and Solak's just kind of like, don't look at her. Don't look at her. Don't look at
And
her.
Tempest is like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
don't I
Yeah.
look awesome? Look at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a cool look. Um, so you talked a little bit before we got into Solok about Will, another champion that is in
Yep.
Idle Champions that you have now cosplayed. Hashtag 28 Days of Black Cosplay, which has been
Truly.
awesome to watch.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about your cosplay in general, but in
Please.
specific with Will.
Mhm.
What was it about that character that drew you to want to cosplay him?
There was just from social media such a underdog representation of him on social media, and there was a lot of like, oh, like Will's too nice for me, or like Will's the soft one, so he's not really in my party. And it's I was like, all right, fine. Because I like when I put him into my party, I liked his character. I liked that everyone else that I met had it felt like they had like an ulterior motive or a hidden motive. But Will from the base to me was pretty clear about what all of his intentions were.
Mm,
And the stuff that he couldn't talk about, it's because he's a warlock and had a pact. And that notion was just like, oh, okay. I love this. The fact that I can have a warlock in my party who I know exactly what they're doing and I know what they're going to approve and what they're not, what they're going to disprove and like where they stand, that was great to me.
yeah.
And like so I was like, okay, I want to do Will. I'd never done like a proper D&D cosplay besides like a character of mine yet either. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, it's time.
Time to pull out the horns. Here we
Yeah.
go.
And I even found I found a designer who had like 3D modeled the horns. And then
Oh,
a friend of mine had a 3D printer. So like I went over and they helped me like print the horns. And then their wife actually does a lot of like cosplay work as well. So she helped me super glue the horns to a headband and then like put some padding on it so that it was like actively softer and easier so it would sit. And originally we were trying to like spirit gum them to my forehead, but
oh,
these horns are chunky.
yeah.
And so it didn't hurt so much, but it was just the weight of them was just dropping down.
Yeah, yeah. Will didn't just get horns. Will got really massive, impressive horns. You
Yeah.
can't ignore them. Uh,
Yeah.
Also, I love that here you are playing Solok, who is this noble character who sacrifices themselves for the greater good,
Yep.
and then you cosplay as Will, who is this noble
Yeah. No,
character.
it stands. It stands the reason. Like the more I think about it, I maybe also I might have been projecting. I might have been projecting. I'm like, why is everyone mean to him? He's just trying his best. He's just trying to be. And then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
I see it. All right, I'll just cosplay myself. That's fine.
Well, and I totally agree with you that, and we'll avoid Baldur's Gate spoilers, like big ones. But I
Yeah,
do think a lot of the other characters that you bring into your party, those ulterior motives make them more complex to deal with. And I think
yeah,
people automatically see that as a deeper character. Whereas
yep,
Will, like you said, is very straightforward. Even when he's not telling you what's going on, it's not
yeah,
that he's like, I'm going to keep this from you. He's very clear of like, I am forbidden from telling you.
yeah.
And yeah, like you would figure that that a lot of people would gravitate towards that kind of assurity, that kind of, hey,
He's so charming. His
yeah,
lines, what it was a, you are the red of the sunrise, the yellow of high noon, and the orange of the sunset.
mm,
If you were a psalm, I would never stop praying. If you were a song, I would never stop singing. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God,
mm-hmm,
that's a rap.
yeah.
It's a rap.
And even in his just regular conversation, he's very poetic. So,
Yeah. He says such silly things, and I like putting him in like the party. I had him in a party with Lazelle, and he was like, Lazelle, do you believe in love? And she's like, no. And it's like, oh, but I do believe in carnal desire. Oh.
Will
It's, it's just like, oh my God. Okay. Yeah.
is also one of those characters who's kind of accepting of everybody.
Yeah.
Like Karlak being the one that maybe took an extra 5 seconds, but
Yeah.
like,
Yes. And he was like, I was wrong. And he didn't fight the fact that he was wrong. He's like, dang it.
yeah,
And then it was through.
yeah. May we all be that immediate with ourselves when we find out we are wrong. Is like, oh nope,
Ooh.
made a mistake.
Maybe I'll do a will playthrough in Romance Karlak.
Ooh. So, have you finished the game? Like I said, no spoilers, but have you
Yes.
finished? You have. Okay.
Yep.
And has it been as your own character or has it been as one of the other?
It was as my own character, so I think I'm gonna do a will run and then Romance Karlak.
That's amazing.
That's
Uh,
gonna be fun.
and then, because everyone's got to ask, did you romance anyone as your character?
Yes. If you can guess who it is, Lord, on the first guess,
Oh, jeez. Pressure, pressure, pressure.
and you're probably gonna make an assumption, and there's a 50-50 chance that it's right. There's someone I intended to romance, and there's someone who I ended up romancing. And if you I'll let you guess both actually.
Okay. All right. So I think Astarion comes to mind, but then I'm going to say Shadowheart. I might be very wrong about this.
No, no, no. I intended to romance Karlak, and I ended up romancing Shadowheart.
Ah, okay.
And I was like, I wasn't mad about it, but I was like, where did you come from? Why why do I keep talking to you? What do you
Mm-hmm.
mean that you're happy we're traveling together? Oh no, you have trauma. Oh no, I care. Oh, you know what? I'll do a 2 hour actual like sidetrack to figure out this one thing that you need to know. And I'm like, how did I get here? I was just trying to leave. I was just trying to leave this area. She's such an interesting character in the sense of what she doesn't know, and that I liked.
Yeah. And the acceptance of what she doesn't know. That, like, all
Yes.
right, well, this is, if I made this decision, then it must have been the right one. And so I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. My justification for Shadowheart in the end was that slow roll of complexity.
Yeah.
And I think
Well, also
she,
having a healer in the party, I was like, oh, I
well,
want a healer.
yeah.
And so then when she was like, not intentionally, she was just always around because something I needed. I was like, oh, we got her. I need to heal. This is great. And then she kept being around for all the like heavy, deep circumstances. And then when she would chime in, like, oh no, not that thing. And I'm like, oh my God, what do you mean, not that thing? Now I need to know.
Why do you got an exclamation point over your head? What's going on? What
Yes.
did we do?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, folks, there you go. Always romance the healer. The
Yeah.
clerics where it's at.
Look, you'll be in great strides if you do.
I have wanted to do an all cleric playthrough and where I respec a couple of
Ooh,
characters and we're
that'd be
all
cool.
just different subclasses of cleric and just like steamroll things.
Yeah, that's smart.
It might run into some difficulties
Eh,
because any even if you've got what people would consider a balanced party, there's always going to be those moments where you're like, oh damn, why didn't I bring Lizelle to this? I really
yep.
needed, I need
One of
two people with big swords.
I've been playing in a campaign with Baldur's Gate with someone who doesn't play video games much and has never played D&D before, and it
Ooh,
has been the greatest experience watching them like understand how D&D works and then general like tactical video games. We came across it's very early on that squirrel that you can meet.
mm,
Um, and then right near the squirrel, there is the bugbear.
mm.
And the bugbear showed up on the initiative order, and I'm like, "Oh, we have to fight it." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "We have to take it out." And they said, "Okay." And then they blew up the squirrel because they didn't see the bugbear on the screen. And they just saw they're like so they didn't yeah, so they blew up the squirrel with an ice knife and they're like, "Why is it still there?" I'm like, "Oh,
Mm.
it wasn't the squirrel." So that's been in the best way so much fun seeing like someone who is in no negative way ignorant to so much of this because it's like, oh my God, these are things that are so clear to me and they're not necessarily immediately newcomer friendly.
Yeah.
Explaining the concept of spell slots on Baldur's Gate when someone's never touched D&D was Like they only used cantrips because they didn't know how the rest of that stuff worked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I think, D&D as well. I think we've both had the experience of the joy of a new player at the table who doesn't have those preconceived notions. And so not
Yep.
only is it fun to watch them learn, but it's fun to watch them make decisions because they don't have those assumptions. It's like, oh,
Yes.
wow, I never thought of that about that before.
Yep.
That's cool. Um, which is why watch this transition. It's like I'm a professional. I was real happy to see this thing that you wrote, the session zero system,
Heck yeah.
because getting new people into TTRPGs is the best for everybody
Yeah.
involved. And so, tell us a little bit about this and what it
Yeah.
does.
So that is the Session Zero system that I designed with my business partner, Elise Resendez. And the concept was when people come to a tabletop campaign or even just a one shot, some people will have like 3 pages of backstory. Some people might have 3 paragraphs. Some people might have 3 sentences. And it's such a variable notion of how much people know or like know how much they should bring, how little they should bring, how much they should have for a story. Because depending on how the scene is set up, depending on what people's wants and desires are, all of that can change. And especially when you're trying to get people into tabletop who have maybe never touched a tabletop role playing game, or
Mm.
it's a system that people have never touched, and they're not sure how much they can add to their character, designing a like narrative and improv based game that people can play through multiple stages. And then at that point, everyone has an equivalent investment and level of backstory. Everyone has a significant NPC in their story, at least one. Everyone has a location that is significant to them, and everyone has an event that set them on this adventure. And then at the end of it, everyone ties one of their pieces to another. So I might tie one of my bonds to an event that happened in your life. An event that put you on this adventure might have been the rival of mine, and they might have been the one that burned down your house. So, like that collaborative storytelling that all of the players have full agency and control over to discuss. And then making a game that people can play by talking through and going through the prompts, that even if the characters don't know this, this is all actively shared player information. Because also with backstories, like people are like, okay, these 4 paragraphs are the things that everybody knows, but these 3 pages are the secret. And
Mm.
it's not that that's innately a bad thing, but you also want to give enough information that everyone else at the table can act on. So like making a game that people can play through and go through the prompts and roll dice for, and it like 30 minutes to like 60 minutes and be able to do that. It was one of the most fun things of like getting my parents to go through these prompts and like build characters and come up with ideas as people who have never really touched role playing games. But seeing them build characters and concepts and seeing how it connected and like the world building of it, it was what I wanted out of a circumstance for playing with people I've never played with before, playing with people I play with constantly, because I want us to all have an equal level of investment in this world and feel like we're all connected in this world. Like when I'm DMing, it's not my story, it's our story.
Absolutely. And as someone who has shown up to games with both the 3 pages and or the 3 sentences, um, once I showed up with absolutely nothing, and it turned into an amazing thing because our DM is
Yeah.
amazing. But yeah, there's that wide range, and I appreciate that it's called the Session Zero system because in in the 5e days of D&D, there's been a lot of really good discussion about having session 0
Yeah.
and the safety tool part of session 0 and
Yeah.
the lines and veils and the consent and all of that good stuff, especially if you're going to go into a game that maybe is more serious topics or is like a
Yeah.
horror themed game. Um, and there's a lot of really great tools to help players and DMs navigate that part of session 0. But the other half of it, we're going to build a world and we're going to build a character and we're going to have
Yep.
pizza and we're going to get excited about the thing. I
Yeah.
think this is kind of the first time that I've seen something outside of the core rule books be like, all right,
Yep.
here's a way to do this that is narrative and you can have fun with cards because
Yeah.
everybody loves a deck of cards.
Yeah. And so
Everybody.
something that I also realized is that like when you're getting especially a new group of people to play together, if the first time they do any sort of play together is during the first session, they don't know how to play together or bounce off of each other or what everyone wants to do. If you have this game where they're getting into character and talking about the stuff that they are yes anding or they're really excited about, then you know what sort of play or what sort of things they're going to dive into more rather than just waiting. Like sometimes you only hear the things that they want to opt out of.
Mm.
But on something like this, you see the things that they actively want to opt into as well.
Yeah, especially when it comes to their characters. Like you were saying earlier about the, here's the secret part of backstory. But most people that I know that have that only the DM knows these three paragraphs, they eventually want everybody to know those three
Yes,
paragraphs. They
exactly.
eventually want it to come out. And sometimes you just
Yeah.
need to figure out a way to tell folks. And
Yep.
I went ahead and grabbed some of the cards because, like I said, I love a deck of cards. I have way too many tarot decks just because the art is real pretty. And
Yep.
then you got to offer me a session zero system that comes with all these cards. What
What a
what?
shame.
Yeah, I know. Why you got to do this to me?
One of
So
my, and I've talked about this before, one of my things I also plan to do is because I love solo games, making solo games that are using those cards for people to explore backstory
ooh,
options for themselves. So like after they come up with a character for this, then it's like, okay, you're traveling down the road, draw one of your bonds. Something happens, draw a catalyst, and then make the choice so that people can like play a little bit of the backstory after they've discussed it with the table.
that's very cool. I was going to ask actually where the idea of integrating custom cards into this system had come from. Like, at what point when you were writing out all these ideas and like, oh, you can do this and this, was it like cards?
Yeah. It's because it's nice having something tangible. And like a card, like if you have a deck of cards, everyone can draw a card from the deck and everyone's on like the table physically, you can flip them over at the same time. Going around like that kind of vibe can be just as much fun or more fun than like everyone's rolling dice on a chart and then like waiting to see what it is. Because when you know it's a 19, you know what that's going to be when you look at the chart. Like it tells you everything. But if the card is upside down still, you've made your choice, but then everyone gets to reveal it at the same time.
That's cool. So you do a lot of TTRPG writing in specific. Like
Yeah.
when you were rattling off all the amazing things that you do and have done at the beginning of the show, a good chunk of it was like written for this and written for that and created
Yeah.
this and done that. So what is it specifically about writing for TTRPGs that is the thing that excites you the most? Is it a different system? Is it coming up with a new mechanic that is exciting? Is it a story? Is it a character? What is that thing that makes you go, yes, I have an idea?
It's giving someone a new way to do something. And it can be something that's already available or it can be something entirely different. And that's it's kind of vague because it's like I love making mechanics for systems that already exist. I love making a mechanic work differently for something that already exists. And I love writing something entirely different. One of the homebrew things that I've done is I've changed how wild shape works in my games entirely. And it's especially because of Baldur's Gate 3. In Baldur's Gate 3, if you wild shape, you can just walk around as an animal perpetually until something happens that knocks you out of it. And I changed that and we added a little, it's more of like a concentration kind of thing for the druid at this point because then if they want to be a squirrel for 3 days and nothing happens to them, I'm just gonna let them be a squirrel because the squirrel's not gonna ruin my plans. And if the squirrel does, like they probably earned it. So
They've been
there's a lot
little
of
squirrel in the background,
yes.
like, yes, with those
So
tiny little hands.
it's just a lot of fun to me to give people new ways to explore something that's exciting, especially like the stuff that I want. It's like, okay, I kind of wish this did something different. I kind of wish this let me be creative in a different way. The notion of balance for me personally is easy to find a medium for because I can always scale the world up to be harder. But if someone really wants to do something just because it's cool and we can find a way to facilitate that in a way that everybody's happy with and in fun, like that's always my priority. I want when I make something, someone to be like, oh, that's neat, or like, oh, that's cool, or like, oh, that was fun. So if that's more character options, if that's a new class, if that's a new story, if that's a new encounter, that motivation, those moments drive me. I cannot think of it's a countless number of times people have come up to me and be like, Gabe, this thing was so interesting. Like this thing was wild. Or like that thing that you wrote, like I hold on to that. And at first, like those moments were like, oh my God, that's not they don't mean it. But then I realized like people that stays with people. Like they're like, no, but like Gabe, like that subclass that you wrote for that fantasy magazine 2 years ago is one of my favorite subclasses that I'm like, what really? So
Yeah.
it's not even so much the praise. It's realizing that I can have shared excitement on the things that I create with other people.
Ah, that's beautiful. And yeah, I mean, I can speak to that myself. Just generally in homebrew, some of the stuff that's just ingrained into my games oftentimes is something that I've seen that someone does, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm gonna
Yep.
do that.
Yep.
And it's because of you that my characters and my players' characters for a very long time, their ability scores and their race were separated because
Yeah.
you were one of the first to come out with like a little supplement to be like, here's
Yeah.
how you do it, and here's how it makes sense, and
And
now
it
you
was
can
so
be a
cool.
kobold who is a bard because they're
Yeah.
awesome.
There were people who were like, Gabe, like more people are doing that. Do you feel I'm like, that's great. That's awesome. I don't need to be the first or the only person to do something. I want to make a version that people are excited about. And if there's more versions of that, that's not a bad thing. They can all coexist. It's actually more exciting because what that also does is I get motivated to make something even cooler or even newer or even wilder or even stranger. And like that is just, yeah, eternal motivation.
So you get, I love watching you get excited about these kernels of ideas.
Yeah.
You
Oh
stream a
my
lot, and
gosh.
that has happened on stream a bunch of times, and that joy is infectious, and that excitement is amazing.
I started a mock-up for that cover.
I was about to say.
Yeah.
So the hard part though, I think we've all had moments of that, oh, this is a really cool idea that I got to do, and everybody gets excited about it. But then you got to actually sit down and do the thing.
Yep.
What motivates you through doing taking that kernel of excitement and actually producing something?
It's having support. And it's like it's having support from friends as well as strangers as well as like people excited on the internet. Especially as a freelancer and a designer, one of the most important things is like I make things for me and I also make things for other people. And if I'm making something that's intended for other people, I want to know that other people want this thing. And when I like talk about something and put it out, like even like making a post or something, I'm like, this is something that I want to do. And it's not even me saying like, do other people want this? It's me saying, I want to make this thing happen. And when there's the excitement and the reaction and the joy and support of like, Gabe, this thing is cool. How can we help? How can we support this? Or like, here's examples of this thing. That is like, all right, yeah, like that they're as excited about this as I am. They want to see this as much as I do. These are things, these are people that like, especially some individuals that are like people I know, but I didn't reach out to them directly. If they're responding saying like, oh yeah, Gabe, if I can help, let me know. That's like, that's a support that is an invitation to reach out and talk about these things. And support makes a huge difference. I could not do this stuff without support and it's like some days I can't motivate myself, but other people motivate the hell out of me. And that is something I'm eternally grateful for.
And there you go. If you don't have the money to support somebody, just telling somebody how much a thing means to them or how much they've enjoyed a thing, you
Yeah.
know, you hear a lot of, hey, if you've enjoyed the thing, like and subscribe and leave a comment. And, you know, it's kind of turned into a little weird meme, but it really makes a difference when you get those positive comments, those
Yeah.
positive affirmations of the thing you're doing.
Yeah. Well, because you never know when that stuff makes a difference. I experience imposter syndrome all the time,
Yeah.
regardless of like my accolades and my achievements. I have plenty of days where I'm like, I don't know if my ideas are good, or like I don't know what my next idea is going to be and if it's going to have any value. But when people are excited about it, like you don't, it's that notion of if you're in a crowd cheering for someone, it's not as important if that person knows who you are as the fact that they get to hear you and all these other people cheering. And when they hear those cheers, even without knowing whose faces those are, even without knowing those names, those cheers motivate you. They keep you going. That like that's even why I stream too. Like it's like I don't have to know who all these people are. If they're like, "Oh my God, Gabe, like what are we doing today? We're playing a game." There's plenty of times I'm just writing and body doubling and the presence of even three people of like, "Yeah, Gabe, get those things done." I didn't realize earlier on how much of a difference that makes.
And we're going to go to chat in just a second to get some of your questions.
Dope.
So if you've got any questions, last chance to get that in. Go ahead and put question in big capital letters so we can grab it. But for those who don't know, body doubling, what actually is that?
So the body doubling is the notion of working in tandem with someone else, even not being in the same room or even not like being in actual contact with each other. But it's that idea of if someone else is working, you are working in tandem with them. So like I'll often stream and I'm not actively like on a call with anyone else, but I'm like listening to music and I'm working and I'm doing this at the same time because working in the company of other people can sometimes make me be more responsible or be more focused. And it's like, well, you know what? I said I was going to get these 5 things done publicly to people who can also see that and note that. And that helps motivate me to get the work done. So there have been plenty of times that I'm on like a Discord call with like 6 of my other friends, and we're all like muted and just sitting and working, but we're in each other's company. We're all listening to the same playlist, and it's like getting that stuff done at the same time together. So body doubling is it's one of the best things that I've started doing, because then I'll like be like, I'm too stressed out and anxious to answer these 6 emails, but I'm going to sit on a stream and I'm going to tell people I'm going to get these 6 things done, and that helps me keep committed to what I said I was going to do.
It's interesting because in context, I kind of knew what you were talking about. And when I watched your other stream the other day, I was like, oh, okay, I get this.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know where that term came from? Because I had always heard it as co-working, but body doubling is
Yes.
such kind of it makes a lot of sense, but it's such a different term.
So body doubling is some that was like especially leaning towards people who are like ADHD or ADD.
Oh.
Because like co-working is often like you're working in the same place just generally to be productive. But body doubling, it's like a subtle pressure that's not a negative one,
Mm.
because it's the pressure of, well, someone else knows that I'm working, and that little extra note of pressure helps keep the focus, and like it reduces the risk of distraction, because these other people are like, all right, well, Gabe's got to get these things done, and like I now know that in my head.
That's cool. I like that distinction.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a few minutes to get a couple of questions in from the chat. Let's
Nope.
start with Cassius335. Question: is it anyone else's headcanon that Lauren's Tiamat is a different version than B Dave's, except it's always the same Solock and he hasn't noticed the difference?
That's hilarious, and I would not be shocked. I, with the notion of like a multiverse and the different existences, something else that's cool to me is if you swear your soul to someone, does that cross over to different universes? And like, there's no single answer to that question, but like,
Hmm.
if it does, they could be an entirely different. You could seek out a different universe because this one is kinder to you and better than the other. There is also just like the concept that if it's not the same, what is your reaction to that person? How do you react? Do you react? So like I like the idea that they're like potentially different.
Yeah. Well, and I have had the joy of being able to play the same character for different DMs and having
Yeah.
that experience of like, oh, this DM is focusing on or doing this or this other thing, and so being able to have the character react different. Have you
Yeah.
been able to have that experience with any of your characters, or we got to get
I
Solock in a
have.
different game?
Haven't with Solaak, but I have had that. I was playing a blade singing wizard, and there was such a difference in like how magic functioned in that world. And like with the first world, it was like, oh yeah, magic is like so normal and everywhere, versus like the world where magic was not forbidden, but it was frowned upon because it was drawing on things that people didn't understand. And so like the idea of using magic, it was like, it's horrible, it's horrifying. Why it was like the idea of like spitting on the ground where someone was standing to like cast a spell in front of them.
Mm.
And it was just that of like, oh, this is very different. My wizard would cast spells like he was throwing birdseed, and I should not do this here.
That's super cool. Um, Also, yes, my Tiamat is very different from B Dave's, but B Dave's is way more terrifying than mine, because B Dave is way more, way better of an actor than I am.
B-Dave is a different actor. Your Tiamat is intentionally different.
My Tiamat is intentionally different, but the stuff that he leans into, the menace that he's able to exude,
Yeah,
is I have a little bit of that
that's fair.
DM acting envy of that for sure.
Yeah.
And then, so speaking of B Dave and Idle Champions Presents Gauntlet Blade wanted to know, Gabe, what was your favorite part of Fury of the Black Rose? Mine was definitely seeing sultry happen.
Solock and Sentry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that interaction, that was
That was
adorable.
it was fun. That was hilarious. That was the funniest thing was I was like, you know what? This is gonna be my one character where there's no romance. And I couldn't even make it through. I was like, you know what? Pretty Robot Tree Girl. Dang it, they got me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really enjoyed that it was a ragtag group who was in incredible danger. And even though there was a bit of conflict at first, it came together very fast in a way that felt natural. And that was huge. Like there's sometimes you get that forced interactions, but this one felt good.
Yeah, it definitely felt like, especially since there were kind of these three disparate groups, because you had the Oxventure couple, you had
Yep.
the Mark's group, Heroes of
Hyrule.
Erois, and then
Yep.
you and Mark coming in with those original characters, and like watching it all meld.
Yeah.
Did you all talk about that ahead of time? Were you all kind of planning character stuff ahead of time, or was that just here we go, let's have some fun on stream?
Pretty much here we go, let's have some fun. Mark and I knew that each other's characters were from the world of Dragonlance already, and we knew what their archetypes were, but we didn't know really anything beyond that. And it was that moment of like, all right, Mark, you and I have played together for like in another game for like months. You want to just dive into this? She's like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so we just dove right into it.
And I know you talked a bunch about that whole experience on the other two times that you were on Idle Insights.
Mhm.
But now, kind of with a little bit of that distance, and now having
Yeah.
this different kind of Solock that you've been thinking about, the undead Solock. If Solock had a chance to go back and talk to any of those characters, get back together with Sentry, do you think those interactions would be different?
I think they would be different in the sense that he would have a greater notion of what it is to have compassion and appreciation for people. Um, I think Miria would hate it, but I think Solak would actually probably hug her if she was still alive, if she still had some sense of her humanity and realizing what it is to be free. I think Solak would be interested to hear about like Sentry's life and world beyond this one. Uh, Talking to Merlwyn about is she happy? Like just discussing like it would be it would be the conversation of I've missed these people, and if they're all here, I'll talk about anything and everything that they want to. Um, they're probably like the first real friends that he's had. He's been a soldier for years, and he didn't have friendships. He didn't make time for it. He saw his duty, and that was his focus. And then he realized he could have a duty and love simultaneously.
This has to happen if only because now I feel like this is the therapy session that all of these characters
Yeah.
need, right?
Yeah, because I mean, to no fault of their own, they left. Like
Mm,
he felt he had to stay behind, but they all left, and all the people that he fought with truly are gone.
yeah. Oh, and if you want to see what we're talking about, Idle Champions Presents Fury of the Black Rose is all up on our YouTube. You can go check it out. And then also then come back to the game and pick up Undead Solak, who is
Oh yeah,
just amazing and awesome and everything. And unfortunately, we're almost out of time. Thank you for joining me for all
my
of this, Gabe.
pleasure.
This has been
It was so much
amazing.
fun.
If people would like to find more of your cool stuff on the internet, where can people
Yeah.
find you?
You can find me across the internet as Gabe James Games, GabeJamesGames.
And you are kind of across the internet in a bunch of
I
different
am
places. And
TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, too many places, not enough places. You'll find me somewhere, and if I'm in the woods, run.
we didn't even get to some of those pictures of you just floating in the air. Just
Oh
like,
yeah,
here's pictures of me
My vertical leap is
floating.
ridiculous.
Yeah, we didn't even get to that. So yeah, go check out all of Gabe's social media stuff. Also check them all out because if you go to their TikTok, there will be different things than their Instagram, which I respect as someone who can only keep up with one or two. But like the fact that you have a panoply of different stuff on all of the different places, bless you for doing all of that. That's amazing.
Yes,
There you go. That's all for this week's episode of Idle Insights. Stick around. Dev Insights is coming up next. Developers are going to answer all your questions. But until we see you again, we'll see you next encounter. Bye.
later.